Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on the Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chiskovsky here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. This week, we talked about the shocking news that the Coyotes will more than likely, as of right now, be heading over to Salt Lake City. Then we talked about Austin Matthews breaking I believe it was the salary cap era goal record is what we're calling it, getting over 65 goals. Then we talked about NHL prospect getting exceptional status in Landon DuPont. Then we talked about Brady potentially making another run at it, just like MJ did in his heroic run with the Wizards, which is how we all remember it, obviously. And then we talk about Bronny potentially going to the NBA through nepotism. Caleb, are you ready to get into it?
Absolutely.
So, in some recent news that happened just a few days ago that pretty much has taken the world by storm, the NHL and the Arizona Coyotes are pretty much... Nothing's on paper yet, but there is an agreement to move the Arizona Coyotes to Utah, Salt Lake City to be specific, to become... I don't know if they're going to be taking the Coyotes with them. I don't know if they'll be going with a new name. No one knows yet. No one knows anything. Because this whole thing is pretty much just coming out of nowhere. They're just saying it could be done by April 18th, which is wild. But it's been a whole heck of a time watching this whole thing unfold. I'm curious what your opinion, Caleb, is on the Coyotes potentially coming to an end for a little bit here. Whether they come back in a few years, we'll have to see. But nonetheless, there's a chance here that we have seen, I believe, the last home game for the Arizona Coyotes. I think that is what, they've already played it, which is wild.
That is crazy. I mean, I don't know. It's been a conversation for more than 10 years now, right? It's not like they had the trip to the Western Conference Final in 2012. I think that was the last time where it wasn't really a conversation. And especially in the last 5 years or so, where I don't remember the whole saga of what it was with, they are at the Gila River Arena, and then I think they weren't paying rent on it or something crazy like that. They got booted out, so they weren't able to play there anymore, and now they're playing at Mullet Arena, the 3,000 seat stadium. So obviously it's embarrassing for the NHL to have that stay afloat, and the Coyotes have just continued to try to get something together, but they had arena plans voted down by the public. They haven't been able to get anything going in that regard. And we talked about the Coyotes, I believe, in a previous segment because there was a land auction going on, and that was kind of seen as their last ditch attempt to build a new stadium, because if they won, basically it was if they won the land auction, they would build a stadium and keep the team. And if they didn't win that land auction, then they would most certainly relocate at that point. That was a conversation we were having a few weeks ago. And now a bunch of things have changed to where the Coyotes actually unveiled plans for what they would do with that land. And the mayor of Scottsdale, where the arena would be built, came out and said, I've got to get the exact quote here.
He pretty much just came out and said they wouldn't have enough water, is the general idea of it.
He said, the prospect of a rookie developer attempting to buy Arizona State Trust land with absolutely no infrastructure at the doorstep of Scottsdale is not feasible or welcome. Their renderings were presented without mention of market demand for a new entertainment venue disguised as a hockey arena, or a congested highway access, or questionable arena zoning entitlement. So basically he was just saying poorly planned out, poorly thought out, and it's not feasible or welcome is the quote everybody's pulling. I feel like that more than anything is the reason that all these reports are coming out, where the NHL must have heard that and been we need a plan, because this isn't going to work. And it looks like even if they win the land auction, it's not going to, who knows if the city will even let them build.
Yeah, and I also,
it sounds like.
I think the report I was hearing as well was also the fact that I think it finally just got back to Bettman that even if they got shovels in the ground today, it would probably still take a good 3 or 4 years to build that arena. And where are they playing for the next 3-4 years? But Mullet Arena. So
Yeah.
I think the estimate they were saying was 2027. Do you really want to stay in Mullet Arena till 2027? No. That is not the best outcome.
Yeah.
The NHL is
Although
leaking money right now.
I feel like Bettman would still probably do that just with how devoted he's been to the Coyotes this year. Like if he had a
I
plan
think
in place,
I
I
think this whole
I feel
sign
like
is
if
kind of this whole thing has been a very good sign that that's not the case anymore.
well, I think that again, this is all speculation because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes with the NHL. But I really do think like the timing of the mayor coming out and saying that the plan isn't going to work, like because the previous reports were that that plan was their last ditch effort and it's been shot down. Like I think that's the big reason because
Yeah.
otherwise it wouldn't have been the conversation of like, oh, if this plan works out, then they'll stay. Like if Bettman already knew that he didn't want to play in Mullet Arena for 3 years while they built a new stadium, he would have moved the team earlier. The team would have already been moved if that was the case, because obviously we're going to need to take time to build a new arena, right? Um, so I don't know. I think that's what tracks for me. I don't think it's as much about the time for building because I feel like that would be an investment he'd be willing to pay. But who knows, right? Because
Yeah.
we're obviously
We're not in the
very
room.
yeah.
It could be a whole bunch of things. I think it's a very cool opportunity, though. I actually think it's a good thing that we're seeing Arizona move. That team has been dead in the water pretty much since their existence, apart from pretty much one playoff run, and the fact that Gretzky was their coach for a little bit there. But I mean, I know that I'm not against it for any real big reason. I think that pretty much it's just a reboot in a city that has wanted an NHL team for a very long time now at this point.
Yeah.
I don't really see the. I mean, obviously, it's not great for Arizona fans, the three that exists, but it's just like for everyone else, it feels like a net positive because Arizona gives them a chance to pretty much. You get this. I'm just gonna call it the stink of the Coyotes off you a little bit there, right? Where you get the chance to pretty much rebrand yourself as a new, fresh NHL team, and honestly, probably. I mean, who knows? We'll see how it ends up working out for them in the next couple of years, but I've seen some stuff for what people want potentially for like color schemes and names and logos, and all the ideas for the most part have been pretty cool. I've definitely been up for it. I don't know. I'm excited for it, is kind of what I mean. It feels like out of nowhere we're just getting a new. It's obviously not an expansion team, but it almost feels like it in that way. We're getting that new, fresh thing that's going to take the world by storm. The big conversation, though, if we want to move over here, that a lot of people have had online, is what's going to happen with the divisions? Is Arizona just going to stay in the Central? Is kind of the thing that people have been asking. And one concept that kind of went viral online that I was going to bring up here, I'm going to try and get a good photo of it, was the idea of pretty much taking an NFL approach. And by that, I mean pretty much doing 8 divisions across the 2 conferences. And then for the playoffs, there's no good way to fit this on a screen. I might just have to read this out to you. Like, it is like, it's basically an iPhone-sized image. So I'm pretty much just sandwiching it in. So I'm just going to read it out. But the photo that I have here has it going pretty much. We'll do the West first. The West is more interesting. It starts off with the Northwest, which is Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Winnipeg. Full Canadian division. That sounds awesome. First off, I'd be all for that. Then it has the Central, which is Chicago, Detroit, Minnesota, and the Blues. Detroit would have to move to the West, which I'm sure they wouldn't be too happy about, but whatever. Southwest,
Detroit was in the West originally.
Yes.
Right?
And they moved to the that's what I mean. They moved to the East for a reason. And I'm sure they probably wouldn't be too happy about having to move back into the West, but again, we're just talking, who knows what they actually end up doing. This is a very drastic change to make in one season, is kind of the one critique for this that I've kind of seen.
Well,
like it is.
I have another, but I'll let you go through it.
Sure.
First.
Yeah. Southwest, which is an absolutely ridiculous division. The Avs, Dallas, Vegas, and whatever the Salt Lake team ends up being. Salt Lake would just lose. That's automatically a lost season for as long as all 3 of those teams remain as good as they currently are. Ducks, or for the Pacific, sorry, it's Ducks, LA, Sharks, and Kraken. Which, I mean, that's just the Pacific Division pretty much as it is right now. Then you get into the East, which we could start up at the top. Northeast, Buffalo, Canadians, Ottawa, and Toronto. And then moving into the Metro, it's Boston, New Jersey, the Islanders, the Rangers, Mid-Atlantic, Columbus, Flyers, Penguins, Capitals. Southeast, you get Carolina, Florida, the Predators, and the Lightning. So, as a whole...
Oh, that's... Can I just jump in right away with that last division and say... So I don't know, like, if this... Because one of the things I saw floating around with this proposal is that they restructured the playoff format with it too.
Yes,
to have the top two
and I was
going
to bring that up.
Make it. Yeah. That is a terrible idea. That is an absolutely terrible idea because of what that. That's why I wanted to jump in right away with that last division.
That's not what I. Okay, that's not what I was hearing.
Tampa.
I was hearing like an NFL style thing where each of the top of like each division pretty much gets in, and then it's a wild card system.
Okay.
That's what I was hearing.
I heard the proposal I heard was top two, which I immediately don't like.
Okay, I agree with you. I don't like top two either. But
I also don't like the NFL system. I've been like an active proponent of the NFL system being kind of stupid because you
for the playoffs or just as the division system.
Yes, for the playoffs.
Okay.
Because then you get what I call the NFC South problem, where there's one division that is very bad, and teams who don't deserve to get in, get in. That is the problem.
You would run into
the
that
NFL playoff system as fall, because if it's the same system, you're going to run into that exactly. And it's the same thing of like when it's a division of 4 versus a division of like 8 or 7, then you're going to be playing those same teams a lot more often, I would assume.
Yes. Which is why like
makes it harder for teams in that like Southeast division you talked about. Like Carolina, Tampa, and Florida are going to have significantly deflated records as compared to some of the teams in the other divisions.
Okay. The one argument against like the one issue that Arizona moving to Salt Lake pretty much causes is the big proposal that people are talking about is the Flames and the Oilers moving into the Central, which, Caleb, I don't know if you've seen the map for what that would look like for what both the Flames and Edmonton's pretty much like season or divisional series would look like, but it is pretty much hell for the two teams. Their travel would pretty much become what Dallas has to deal with right now, which has been pretty notorious as the worst team, like as for like miles traveled every season. They would pretty much have to deal with the same thing, which has left a lot of people not very happy about, which is why this whole thing kind of came about. I think I like this more. I do see what you're talking about, because you would still run into that issue. Like if there is ever a season, for example, like where I look at right now, I think a really good example of it would be this Mid-Atlantic, if we were playing with this, right? Where all of a sudden the Penguins and the Capitals sort of have a chance at the playoffs, but this pretty much would mean that they are 100% making it despite not being worthy.
Which, yeah, that's the dumb part of this system. Another like again, I think it's like I don't want to shit on the concept too much because like it's an interesting thought experiment and I like it for that, but it doesn't work in practice. Also because I don't know why this change specifically would necessitate it. Because I don't think you need to make these big sweeping changes for Salt Lake versus Arizona. Salt Lake versus like Phoenix, where they were playing, they're kind of in the same spot in the U.S. Utah is right above Arizona, and they're not any further west.
Well,
Salt Lake City is not any further east or any further away.
It's important to note.
Closer.
It's important to note that I know nothing about the United States map, and I'm a dumb stupid head. So do not take that into account with any of my opinions.
I don't know. I'm looking at yes, like Salt Lake. It would be a little bit further north, which would make travel a little bit harder, I guess. But it makes it a little bit closer to the Pacific teams.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It is still one state away.
Yeah.
It's that far of a difference. It puts them closer actually to teams like Colorado. It's closer to Colorado now.
Can I throw this in as well, though? A big reason that I've heard for why they want Salt Lake in the West is mainly because they want to make that. I think they were saying they want to make a Salt
in the
Lake.
Central.
No, they want to set up the rivalries for the future, being like Salt Lake, Vegas. Oh, there's another one in that mix that I can't remember now. Salt Lake. Oh, and I think their proposal would also have the Avs move into the West Pacific.
To the Pacific.
Yeah, so that they could kind of set up that rivalry.
So
Which is
it would
why
essentially be
both the Flames and
Salt
Edmonton
Lake.
would move into the Central.
So the trade would be Salt Lake and Colorado
Yeah.
for Calgary and yeah. So like you pointed out earlier, that would just immensely screw over the Flames and the Oilers.
Which
They're a lot farther away.
Oh yeah, no, they absolutely
all the other teams in the Central. Then so like, I just don't think it's enough of a move to like if Arizona was moving to Portland, like if they were moving to Portland, I would be like, okay, that is a Pacific Division team, and it would be very weird to have them in the Central Division. You probably have to move someone out, even someone like at that point you'd be looking into moving like I don't know, like Vegas even, although that would be kind of no, you'd move Dallas.
Yeah.
You'd move
Dallas.
You'd move Dallas. Yeah, you'd move Dallas.
Yeah.
Or how would this? No, you'd have to move someone from the Pacific into the Central. So you'd have to you'd have to move probably Vegas. Probably Vegas would be the team. Because that would be
unless you're doing exactly what they're doing here, which is moving the Flames or Edmonton. Like it's just the crappy thing. The crappy thing is I actually think realistically, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Because on a business standpoint, for the NHL, they want to create that good American rivalries between like Salt Lake City, Vegas, and Colorado. That is the conversation. That is the whole reason we're being forced to have these conversations. Is the fact that they want that. And I honestly think their want for that to pretty much manufacture those rivalries is bigger than their care for the Flames and Oilers like having to put a few more kilometers on their boots. I don't think they care. So realistically, I think that this is all semantics anyway because I don't think it's happening. I don't think the NHL would ever go to this sort of system. I just think it's cool. I like it a lot. I like the idea of having an all Canadian like Northwest. That sounds awesome. But I do see where you're coming from though. It is not without issues.
Yeah, it would be. I don't think it would be very. To quote the Scottsdale mayor, I don't think it would be feasible. But I don't know.
It's not enough water for this for this 8 division NHL.
What you're talking about with the rivalries, like if they ever did it, that would be why, and that's a very good point. I just don't think they would enact such like you said at the start. It would be a very drastic change.
Yes.
Not only like the eight division format, even more so, but even just switching like Calgary and Edmonton into the Central.
Well, think about you know what? I don't even think it's that. I think the biggest change is the fact that the NHL is not going to want to do that to its playoff format. If they're taking an NFL approach with it, you got to realize that is giving teams basically buys at that point. That's what you're pretty much doing. So it just becomes almost.
Yeah, they wouldn't do that.
They would. They wouldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't. You'd have to look at that. What they would probably do is they would just have 4 wild. If you're really to think this out, what they would probably do is they'd have 4 wild card teams. Then they'd do top division winner versus lowest wild card.
Oh, okay.
Second highest division winner against second lowest wild card. They'd do
that. Okay.
That would be how that would work probably, so that they'd keep the playoff format. Anyways, I think it's interesting thought experiment. None of these changes, even this most minuscule one of just moving teams from Pacific to Central and vice versa, would be too much. Especially if you're already making the change of moving a team. I don't agree with that. I think that the Flames and Oilers going to the Central, I actually think that's probably the most likely option. As crappy as it will be. I think the most likely option is they stay.
I'm just looking at it as a business type decision.
Okay. Let's run through this though. So if Salt Lake and Colorado move to the Pacific, what have you gained in terms of a rivalry? You've gained the rivalry with Vegas for both teams, frankly.
Yeah.
Okay. But what if Salt Lake City team, just what if it's status quo? Um, you're only losing that rivalry with Vegas. You still have the rivalry with Colorado, which I think it would be a bigger rivalry just proximity wise. Um, I don't know.
And
Like
to also
I don't
add
think
to
you're
your
creating
opinion,
that much revenue.
the issue, another huge issue a lot of people in Calgary have with this, or people just around the team, is the fact that you're losing that rivalry with the Canucks.
Yeah,
And you're
it's
just
creating problems for no
assuming
reason.
you're assuming that a rivalry with Winnipeg would just start up.
It's
Which,
creating a problem for no reason.
yeah.
It's manufacturing a problem.
Well, what you're doing
It's
is you're manufacturing rivalries, hoping it works.
yeah.
Which
Versus you just keep things how they are.
Caleb,
then,
I've already made my argument for why I don't think it should happen. I
Yeah.
think what I'm saying is, realistically, I do think it's a possibility.
I don't think it will. I don't think it will. I think it's even too stupid even for the NHL. I don't know.
I mean, we'll see. I hope you're right.
By doing that. Because I don't know. Like, do
I
they
just-
want the rivalry between Salt Lake and Vegas that bad? Between a bad team
I think
and
Bettman
a
just doesn't care
fantastic
about the
Vegas
Canadian
team?
NHL teams enough to make it work.
Yeah, but even then, you're not gaining anything. What's the point?
Well, yeah, you're
What's the point of
gaining
making it work?
Vegas versus Salt Lake.
That's literally
Yay!
nothing. That's literally nothing. It's not going. Yeah. If he does that, it's going to be like one of the stupidest things ever because it's literally making like it's not like the NHL wants to tinker with these divisions either because it makes them
Yeah.
look unstable, right? I think it does. Like if teams are switching divisions every year,
Wow.
like what's the point?
When was the last division change?
Probably Arizona into the Central when Seattle came in.
Oh, I guess.
And then they like the realignment when they changed the playoff format and everything in Detroit. Maybe it's time.
Yeah,
maybe it's time to
I
Detroit.
forgot about the Seattle thing. I was thinking
Yeah.
it was Detroit.
I don't know. Just making that change for literally no reason. I don't know. I don't think division changes are good because it
No,
shows that you kind of fucked up in planning it.
Well, I mean, there's not. Yes, that already happened when Arizona failed to build an arena. Like that's not
That's
news. Yeah, I don't know. I like I said, I don't. I just think there is a distinct possibility that might be the scenario we're looking at next year, which would suck. It would suck a lot, and the fact that is a conversation that's being had just sucks a lot. So yeah.
It would. So we recently had. It's not necessarily a defined record break, as in like this is the most goals of all time, but it is the most goals of the salary cap era. That was recently achieved by Austin Matthews. He scored his 66th, I believe, 2 days ago as a recording, so that would be what, Wednesday, and it broke Ovechkin's 65 goal mark in the salary cap era. And the last time for someone to score as many goals as Matthews did was Mario Lemieux back in 1995 to 96, which is obviously some pretty exclusive company to be in.
Oh yeah.
It's an insane mark for him. There's lots to talk about here in terms of like what this means for his legacy, what this means for the rest of the season going forward. I know you brought up before the pod the possibility of him being in the conversation for the Hart Trophy amongst all this. What are your kind of general thoughts on this, just to get started?
Well, it's obviously a big deal. I think oddly, I felt like a lot of people have kind of just pushed it to the wayside because of what Kucherov and what McDavid are currently doing. But it is an insane accomplishment, the fact that he is pretty much on pace to hit 70. It feels like a foregone conclusion that he's going to do it with the amount of games that they have left. So it's pretty bonkers. He's having an I hate to give any love towards the Maple Leafs, but he is having an absolutely ridiculous season. And I mean, it's led to a lot of conversations that he is absolutely worthy of being in. I think that the fact that people aren't talking about him for Hart is pretty bonkers. I think that, sure, his points are nowhere near like Kucherov and McDavid. But one argument for his case is just the simple conversation of what do you think's more impressive, 70 goals or 100 assists?
Yeah.
which I'll toss over to you because I'm curious what your opinion on that is.
Well, I think it's the fact that it hasn't been done since Mario Lemieux in
Yeah.
1995. I think that tells you what's more impressive. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to say anything more than that.
Well, it is certainly. I mean, not to discredit 100 assists because just because it's happened,
Oh, no,
it's
no.
happened twice this year. It is that is as well an insane accomplishment. But you have to
Yeah.
consider the fact that that counts secondary assists. That counts all of that type of thing. Goals are goals.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews by the end of this year, more than likely, maybe don't knock on wood. I actually don't know if I'd feel that bad for him if he didn't in 70. Screw the Maple Leafs. But like, if all things continue going the way they're going, Austin Matthews is going to hit 70 goals, and he will have put all 70 of those goals in the net by himself. At least, like, I don't know how many primary assists Kucherov and McDavid have off the top of their head, but it's not 100. Right? Like that's the thing. And I would reckon that it's probably not 70 either. It's probably in the 60s if I were a betting man.
Yep.
So I mean, it really should show just how insane of an accomplishment he is. I mean, sure, he's got a talented roster pretty much surrounding him, but I don't know. I think I don't know what else to even add to that other than moving on to the other parts of this conversation, just on more legacy and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he absolutely should be in the Hart conversation if he's not already there. I think this is a stupid season for it. This Hart race has been absolutely insane. Because I mean, I didn't even mention McKinnon, but he's also up there. Like I think in points, I think that they pretty much have a three-way tie going, and that has pretty much distracted away from the fact that up north, Matthews is having one of the greatest scoring seasons we've seen in just about 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If we want to move over, because I do think honestly, with the Hart Trophy conversation, it is kind of a crapshoot, and it's not like you said with the 100 assist season. It's not like those guys won't deserve it. Like you said, I think he should absolutely be in the conversation, but it's not the thing where I'm gonna say like he got robbed necessarily if like McDavid, Kucherov, or McKinnon get it, because I think they all deserve it. Even if I do think that having a 70-goal season is a little bit more impressive, and should probably garner you the award. It's such a close race and such impressive seasons from all four guys that I wouldn't be upset either way, depending on who it goes to. In terms of the legacy stuff, so the last person to score more than 65 goals in a season in the salary cap era was Ovechkin.
Yeah.
And this is what I think the really interesting part of the conversation is. We got into this a little bit before the pod.
Yeah.
Where you posed a hypothetical situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to run through that.
So Ovechkin scored 65 goals back in 2007, 2008. So the hypothetical that I have seen be tossed around the internet is if you were to pretty much take a time machine, kidnap Alex Ovechkin in 2007 and bring him to the current times, would he be able to do what Austin Matthews is currently doing? And if so, how many goals do you think he'd be able to score? And the reason that this is so interesting to me is because you see pretty much two opposite sides of the spectrum, where you see people who are Toronto Maple Leafs fans saying, no, nothing would change. He'd score 65 goals. And you're seeing people who are legitimately in full belief that Alex Ovechkin would be able to not only break his mark of 65 goals, but would arguably be a threat to Wayne Gretzky's 92-goal record, which is a ridiculous thought to think about. I mean, even if you just look at the point totals for that season, I think that's more the biggest argument. I think I was looking at it before the podcast. I think only 2 players broke the 100-point mark, which we have seen that. It is, I don't have the number in front of me for how many players have done it this season, but I can tell you it's a lot more than 2. I think there's more than, I think 3 players have 120. So that margin has certainly raised. And I think, I don't know. We talked about it a bit beforehand, but I'll let you give your opinion on this whole thing.
So,
and then I'll give mine.
I think that's going way out of hand, and I do think that a lot of the times in discussions like this, there is like what I call like a nostalgia bias,
Yes.
where it's not like Ovechkin wasn't great, but you kind of like
Do
put
you?
him on a higher pedestal because it's not like I don't know. I feel like you look more. It's rose tinted glasses, right? You look
Yeah.
back on the past more favorably. Not that Ovechkin wasn't fantastic. Not that I don't think he would score more than 66, but I do think that a lot of those comparisons to say like he's going to break the all-time goal record or he's going to score like 75. I think he'd probably end up around where Matthews is at around 70 would be my guess because of the slight inflation of goals per year. So I pulled up actually. I have all the
Did you
stats in
actually pull
terms
it
of
up?
what scoring. Yes, I did. So this year, average amount of goals in a game is 3.11. That is indeed up from because it was 0708. It was 2.8 goals per year. So it's not that much of a difference.
So if you
Um,
apply the math,
yeah, so like you could do
yeah,
that.
if you
I
apply
mean,
the math, how many does
obviously
Ovi
that's
get?
a very imperfect science. I mean, it's
Yeah.
probably like 65 to 70.
Yeah, it probably is.
Here's the reason if I want to keep making this point as because it is a combination of like rule changes and overall improvement of talent around people because the more people who enter the league as time gets on the talent pool gets better.
Yes.
But the comparison I want to make is to when people were setting these goal records in the 80s
Yeah.
and in the mid 80s and 90s. So remember, it's like a little bit over 3 goals per year this
Oh, yeah.
year. It's a little bit under. Yeah, no, we're at full 4 goals per game.
Oh, yeah.
Averaging 4 goals per game.
No,
in the 80s.
that is why we're having this conversation at all about the. I almost would refrain. I would change. I would change the term of like most goals in the salary cap, or just change the thing to most goals post Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, like I don't know, Teemu Selanne and Brett Hull.
Brett Hull.
Like that's what it should really be. Because there was, I think, once all of those guys screwed off and we entered the dead puck era, it was a completely different game. Which is the reason we're having this conversation at all. It's the fact that Ovechkin, I think, won the scoring race with like 107 points, which is pretty low. I think, I mean, I think there's obviously been players who have gotten lower, I think, in that time frame for the Art Ross, but I'm having a hard time thinking of any.
It is a low number. So one other thing that I think you have to bring up in this conversation is supporting cast.
Yes,
because
that's
are you bringing the entire 2007 Capitals team?
That's a good point.
Or
What
are
did
you
they look
just
like?
bringing Ovechkin and putting him on the? They were third in the Eastern Conference. I don't think they were quite peak Capitals yet, but they were. Like Boudreaux was the coach. They had Nicholas Backstrom at that point. Like they were still a good team. They're probably a lot better than this current Capitals team. Is my point. If Ovechkin has to play with his current Capitals team, I just think because he can't play the game by himself, he'd still probably hit around 65. But I wonder if that deflates it a little bit and almost balances out the stuff in terms of
that is an interesting point.
Improvements in pace of play. Yeah.
Looking at this team, I don't actually think they did have back. Oh no, they did. I was missing them. Never mind.
They did.
They did have Backstrom. Yep. It was a 20-year-old Backstrom who still had 55 assists, 14 goals that year. That's wild. That is a wild stat line. But yeah, no, I see your point because that is the interesting thing. I mean, looking across the board, they really didn't have that much talent on this team either. That is the funny thing. Like, if I'm just looking at point totals, like I don't remember this team at all for the most part. But like it goes Ovechkin with how many did he officially have? 112. Okay, I was off by a bit actually. That's actually a pretty good number for the Art Ross. But he had 112. Then it goes to Backstrom, and then it goes to 42 for Semin. I think his name was Semin. Alexander Semin. It's been a while since I've had to say that name.
Yeah.
Like he had 42, and then it falls off a cliff. And then it's just a bunch of people floating around the 30s. Which is, even considering the dead puck era, that is pretty sad. Like
Yeah, but
past that
still,
top
as a
line.
team as a whole, they're still third in the Eastern Conference,
Yeah.
right? Like they're still a good team, and I still think they're because like the Capitals are ninth currently.
Yeah.
The Capitals, it's versus they had 94 points to finish the season in 2007 2008. They're not going to get close to that here, unless they win all their last 3 games. I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's all hypothetical.
Yeah.
I do think that I think providing that context to it in terms of goals per year hasn't increased that much, and do you bring the entire team back with him? Also, like competition is probably harder too. That's another thing to factor in.
Yes.
Like the teams he's playing against are probably better. So I don't know. I think we should. I know it's tough because I think we get nostalgia bias, and I think we also want. It's also easy to discredit people for playing for the Leafs and not want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say
acknowledge them as much. But I do think it's really important to be like, yeah, this is like legitimately one of the more impressive things we've seen in the sport in the last few years.
I just think that the conversation of Ovi versus Matthews is such an interesting one because it's two goal scorers who are legitimately fairly different in how they scored their goals. Like there's other than the fact that both of them have the ability to shoot the puck like pretty much no one else we've ever seen. They had pretty much no crossover in their styles, especially like in the last little bit, which I think just has made it a lot more interesting. I think it almost becomes a thing of which style do you think would be more effective now, which I think you gotta give to Matthews. As much as I love me some Ovi. I love me Ovi.
Yeah.
Ovi is one of my favorite players. But like I mean there's a reason it's working for I still think that Ovechkin's style is pretty much timeless. Like I think that the ability to pretty much pick a spot on the ice and just sit there. He didn't do that as much back then, but still. Like that being if as long as people still know how to pass, at which people do in every single era, you'll be able to score by doing that for until the death of the sun.
True.
Like
That's true.
I think that his style would still translate well, like prime Ovi. But I don't know. I definitely think before this, I went into it thinking that my estimate for what I think Ovi would get in this 2024 era would be probably 75. I don't think he beats Matthews by much. I don't think he gets close to that Gretzky number. But I think that he probably just adds... I mean, he adds 10 is what I was pretty much guessing. I think he would probably end up adding 10 to that total. Which the more we've talked about it, I've kind of hated that opinion a bit more. Because I definitely see your side of things. But at the same time, screw the Leafs. So I'm gonna die on that hill. I'm gonna die on that hill.
The more we've talked about it, the more I think it may not even change. Like that may be my final opinion that I come to. I've kind of swayed between 70 and 65. It probably doesn't change by all that much, I think.
I think 70.
I don't think it's been...
I actually think it would go 70 just based on the numbers that you kind of brought up.
Yeah.
Realistically,
I think that's
without
fair.
bias, I think 70 is a good number. I think both players probably end up sitting around 70. But because Matthews plays for the Leafs, Ovi gets 75.
There you go.
And because Ovi is a hilarious Russian man, and I love him. So he can have 75.
Okay. So one last thing before we wrap up, I think. Whether you want to put bias aside or not, Ovi is obviously chasing the all-time goals record right now.
Yeah.
What do you think the chances are that at the end of his career, Matthews beats Ovi to that record?
Ooh. You see, that's so hard. Not because I don't think
it's impossible to tell because there's like
I was gonna say
years left
that's not a testament of skill. That's a testament of longevity. Which I mean, Ovechkin. Actually, you know what? I can give an answer on this. No, I don't think so. For the exact reason that I gave for why I think Ovechkin's style back then translates so well to the game now, and still does translate. I mean, that dude can't even skate anymore, and he's still scoring 30 goals. Like, I mean, just look at it like that, right? I think that the reason that Ovechkin has been so successful for so long is because he has been able to plant his ass inside of that circle, like on the power play, and just sit there and just wait for somebody to pass him the puck, top corner, game over. And it's just that every single time. And it works. It works for him. Nobody knows how to stop it because there's not really a way to stop it. It is just fundamentally a very easy way to score, and no one else is better at it. And Austin Matthews, I think, I don't know. He doesn't really have that signature move yet, I'd argue, which is a good thing. It shows that he's versatile. But does that versatility last until he's 35 or and higher? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe he falls off a bit quicker than Ovechkin does. And I think so that would probably be my prediction. Is that discounting Matthews? Maybe. But I think that the whole, I don't know. I also just love the fact that Ovechkin has literally just made a career off of standing still. He's basically just Shaq in the paint. It's hilarious.
I mean, that's kind of the thing where it's like, you're right in terms of it is more of a longevity thing than a talent thing at that point. Because I don't even have this off the top of my head, but I'm 99% sure that Ovi has played way more than Gretzky at this point. It's because I'd be pretty certain. Okay, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm not as certain.
I don't think so.
But we can maybe try to pull that up. But I do think it is.
No, definitely he has. Never mind. I'm talking on.
There we go.
Okay,
that's what I thought.
I didn't know. I didn't pull up the number. I just actually thought about it for a second. I'll get you the actual number. But
I do think that is the era conversation we're talking about too, in terms of the era Gretzky played in. Anyways, putting all of that aside,
Gretzky played literally from the start of the high point era to the end of it. He played the perfect amount of time in that. Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wait. Oh wow! Actually, Gretzky played more by around only 60 games.
Oh wow!
It's
okay.
very close.
Gretzky played technically.
Gretzky played from 81 to 1999. Ovi's played from 2003
to now.
Is it 6? Is that right?
Yeah, 2005, 2006.
Oh. Why did I have that number?
Yeah, it's not, I think because he was drafted in 2003, lockout year 2005.
Oh, that's why. Yeah. Okay, never mind.
So think about that too. If Ovi had a season like age 19.
Well, you also got to think about what was it, 2013, where he only got half a year, then COVID. There's a lot of what ifs.
Honestly,
he could have had it. There's a world out there where he probably already has it.
That is another reason why this conversation is kind of silly, because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 15 years. COVID 2 comes up.
Oh shit! COVID 2 electric boogaloo. It's coming for us all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
My question, one more thing I'll throw over to you. I like to think, at least, and this is because I'm an optimist when it comes to Ovi breaking the goal record, is the fact that I am too. I have a very firm opinion on this as well, because I've seen this tossed around. Do you think that there is a world out there where Ovechkin goes, and this is assuming Ovechkin still has a love for the game, and maybe the Capitals end up getting a little bit better and they're contending, and he has a reason to stick around. Do you think there's a world where Ovechkin can hit 1,000 goals?
What's the goal record? Is it 8?
He's at
892.
It's 892. He has 852.
Yeah, he's not gonna get 1,000.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, I think he is just you know what's the funny thing? I think it would be the most Ovechkin thing ever for him to legitimately just quit the second he gets 853 or 893. I think he's jumping on a plane back to Russia the day that happens.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe.
Be shocked,
I think he's done the second. I think that's the only reason he's still playing. I think if he either had the record or it was just way out there, it wasn't even a question, I think he wouldn't be playing anymore. I think he would have retired. Because if you think that, I think Ovechkin's past his prime, and he's past his prime by quite a bit. I'd actually argue that he's kind of overrated at this point. And I know that's a crazy statement considering he has 64 points, still had 30 goals. But like the only reason he's still scoring 30 goals is because that shot ain't going anywhere. He still absolutely has that. But I mean, watching that dude skate, he doesn't have it anymore. Like you can tell.
He's 38.
Exactly. Right? And there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. But do I think he'll hit 1,000?
The goal record.
Hell no. Oh yes, get Ovi the goal record. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the one thing I would say in terms of just to finish up the conversation with what we were talking about before, I did want to bring up the fact that through 8 seasons in both of their respective careers, Matthews is currently outpacing Ovechkin.
By how
much? Not
by
much.
By how much?
Not by much. 6.
I was going to say, that's not going to save him. I still think that the one, and I will say this, it's not a skill thing. You can say whatever you want. That's why I had first brought up the argument of primes, of whether you think it's a longevity thing, and it's going to stay that way. I don't give a shit if Austin Matthews has 2 or 3 70-goal seasons in his career in the next little bit. That doesn't matter. He still needs to put up the amount of 50-goal and 40-goal seasons that Ovechkin has been able to put up, which I honestly don't think anyone will be able to do again for a very long time. Just because it's the type of thing where it's the sky hook, it's the fadeaway, it's the step back 3. Austin Matthews don't got that. He doesn't have his signature thing that he can go to get a goal. Like he has is pure unbridled goal scoring ability. That is the one thing that he has. So if you really want to look at it just like that, he is probably the most well-rounded scorer that we have seen.
Oh yeah, that's a good
ever, point. If not. I mean, I'd put Mario Lemieux in that conversation with him.
I would probably put Mario over.
I think I would too. I would too. I'm just putting this argument out there. Like it's It's just the fact that, and it should just show you how there's no reason to really like. We're not trying to take away from what Austin Matthews is doing. He still is a ridiculously skilled player. And the fact that he's even in this conversation should say wonders. But to be able to reach the point that Ovechkin has had, you have to really have that one thing, right? It's the same thing for like... It's the same thing with like... I know this one actually was broken, but it's the same thing as the Kareem NBA scoring record, where he got that because he just... Basically, nobody could stop him in the paint. He had a skyhook. He pretty much was unstoppable from inside, like 5 feet in the paint. Nobody could stop him. And it wasn't until we saw LeBron come in, and LeBron could just score at will. Which, if you want to make the argument that Austin Matthews is your LeBron in this scenario, Leafs fans, go right ahead. I will listen to you, but you can go right ahead. I mean, it's going to be a tough road ahead for him. I think that especially when he gets up there and the speed starts to leave him and all he's left with is his shot. Is he still going to be able to do it? We'll see. It'll be interesting. Yeah. I mean, we've got the next 15 years to see what ends up happening. So we're going to be moving on to a bit of a different topic here with an exceptional player being named for the first time since 2020, with Connor Bedard being the last one. And we're going to be continuing that in the WHL, with the second ever WHL player being named as an exceptional player in Landon DuPont. And he is a 14-year-old defenseman who is from Calgary and has been playing with Edge School. I don't know for how long. This might be his first season there. I have no clue. But he has been absolutely just destroying everything. He has been dominant as it gets. If you look at some of his stats or watch any of the tape, he is absolutely incredible. You pretty much you won't hear a bad thing from any scouts who talk about him, and it's fair. As I got to call one of his games back in. He played in the Circle K Classic. I did play-by-play for that tournament. And I can fully say that offensively, he is completely as advertised. I think he has probably the best edge work I have ever seen live. And that says a lot. I've watched NHL hockey. Like, I'm fully saying that. Like, he almost can go as fast while going sideways as he can forwards, which is the most stupid thing that I've ever watched in my life. And he just I mean, he's playing against 16, 17-year-olds at 14, and he's dominating. And that should say a lot.
Yeah.
At defenseman. He's
Which
putting
is
up these totals at defenseman.
Yeah, like I have his stats here. So he played at the Edge School, and they played 30 regular season games.
Yeah.
And again, keep in mind he's a defenseman. Do you have a guess for how many points he had?
I do because I know the number.
Do you know?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
62.
yeah, 62.
But, yeah. Just the most stupid thing.
More
ever.
than 2 points per game.
Yeah.
Against so it is against older competition.
Yes.
And
good competition.
Okay, it's a good school. It's under 18, so playing against 16 and 17.
Like the division that they play in is there are scouts coming to watch the players in these tournaments and in the league that he's playing in, and he's basically dominating these other CHL prospects and making them basically look amateur. Like, if you watch him, the one thing that a lot of people have pointed out, like, this is, if you read any of Eric Francis's, articles on him or anything like that, is the one thing that really makes him stick out. And it always is this. Whenever you see players dominate like this, they can be as athletic as they come, but if they can't read the ice, they are useless out there. They won't know where to go. Landon DuPont basically plays like he's 10 steps ahead of everyone else on the ice, which makes him just that much more skilled. He's so disciplined. He's so patient when you watch him play. He knows he's the quickest person on the ice, and he takes advantage of it because he knows he doesn't need to use his speed the whole time to score, which is what makes him such an insane offensive player. I remember making the comparison on the broadcast, basically saying he's like a fourth forward up there. Like, he pretty much rushed up every shift because that's where he's going to make his money. Like, he's absolutely a ridiculous. I heard one. I don't know whether they were serious about this. I kind of hope not because it's not a good take. But I heard one person that I was working with make the argument that he thinks that he should just move up to winger. Because
for someone who hasn't seen him play, I assume the reason you'd be making that comparison is that his defense isn't very good. Like when you watched him, is his defense?
I thought that
obviously he's 14.
Obviously he's 14 playing 17-year-olds, which needs to be that needs to be pointed out. I did think he got knocked around a lot in the defensive zone. I think it's just because he's undersized. Like, he's not going to be able to push players around. And I think a lot of people really liked his response in this article to Eric Francis when asked about it, because Eric Francis, I think, did ask him about it, like how he was kind of
it's a hard question for a 14.
Well, how to deal,
a lot of media attention.
Oh yeah.
For a 14.
Well, I think he's got to be used to it at this point, but sure. He was pretty much asked like how he deals with playing against players who are both a lot bigger and physically stronger than he is and older, and he basically just said that he just goes home afterwards, takes a nice bath or whatever, and he's fine. And I just thought to myself,
that's such a hockey player
response.
That's
a hockey player response, but that's also like a 15-year-old kid response. My thought in my own head at the time was kind of like, what happens when he gets a little bit older and he takes that ice bath and he realizes it doesn't work the same anymore, and you still end up aching the next day. Like, I'm pointing this out, Caleb, just to say that I think he's a little reckless when he goes into corners is one thing I noticed. Like, he's not necessarily going out there. He's not like I don't know, what's a really good comparison? He's not the Sidney Crosbys of the world, where Sidney Crosby has taken 2 fights in the last 20 years, right? Like, he won't go, like, he'll still go into corners, but if he thinks he's going to get hit, he won't go down there. He's not avoiding physicality. Landon DuPont is not afraid to go into the corners and fight for it, which is a good thing. It's a big reason why he's able to play in that defensive spot and still be successful, I think. But if I were to honestly say, I think he's average defensively. For like the league he was playing in, I didn't think defensively anything really made him stick out. Where he's going to make his money is obviously offensively. I think he needs to work on his defense, if anything. Like in the WHL.
I feel like that's what the WHL and the CHL is for, though.
Yes.
Right? It's to find, like, I feel like especially for players who are obscenely talented like he is, offense comes naturally and defense is something that you grow with and work on. right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like that generally that's a very,
I
very
also think
probably broad overgeneralization, but I feel like that's generally the trend
I
we
I
see.
also think that as he plays a little bit, I think if I could throw a prediction out there, I think he's probably going to get knocked around quite a bit in his first month in the WHL. It is pretty common knowledge that the WHL is the most physical out of all the Canadian hockey leagues, like as in like junior
Mhm.
leagues, and I
Yeah,
don't think that's really something that goes in his favor. I think that I still think he'll dominate. Offensively, I still think he'll kick ass. I think he's gonna have a rough time, like defend in the defensive zone in that first season. I think there's gonna be a bit of a learning curve there. That's not me saying that I am a huge fan of him personally. Like if you watch him, I mean it's just the most bonkers, some of the most bonkers hockey plays you'll see because he's so quick. He's so quick. He's so patient. He has a wire of a shot. Like it is pretty bonkers just to watch that whole thing unfold. So I personally am really excited to see how he does in the WHL. I think it's pretty much a
yeah,
foregone conclusion he'll go first overall to Everett, but I mean we'll see. I That is my one thing that I'll put out there because I everyone has been talking about how incredible. You can go anywhere on the internet right now and you can hear about how incredible his offense is. I won't be the first person to tell you that. I think it's a lot harder to find and nitpick things that he's not good at. And if I were to give you one thing, I think he's a little reckless in the defensive zone. I think as somebody who, well, I don't know. I think that as he plays against even bigger players next year, because he's just going to be going
again,
up there. Yeah, he's going to be playing against
again,
18-year-olds, like 20-year-old,
yeah, he's a
18-year-olds, right?
20-year-old. Yeah,
Yeah. And when
and I
that
mean, like
starts
even
happening, he's going to get knocked around. He's
we've
going to
had
take
this
some big hits.
conversation. Yeah, we've had this conversation even about Bedard in the NHL, where
Yes,
it's like he's an
absolutely. That's a good point.
18-year-old kid going up against fully grown men,
And
and I think
Bedardus
I
was
like
fully up for the task. Like,
yeah, and I mean it does fully depend on the player, but I
yeah.
do think it is something to say like
Can I point out though?
I
Can I
watch
point something out?
watch Bedard get even better. Yeah, sure.
Bedard has what DuPont has and doesn't in this scenario of Bedard doesn't really go towards the corners and that physicality. Bedard plays in the center of the ice, right? Like
Yeah,
it should say a lot about the fact that whenever we see Bedard really get hit, it goes viral. Because it's like welcoming him to the league, right? But I mean, that should like we've seen 3 of those hits all season long really that I can remember, and that should say a lot. He's been lit up like that 3 times. Right?
yeah.
I think that I don't think DuPont really has that. I think that the way he plays he's going to get hit a bit more. That's more just what I mean. That's my worry. I think that
Yeah.
he's going to go to the WHL. He's going to get his bell rung a couple times, I think. But I think that's okay. I think that's part of the learning curve. As long as he doesn't get hurt, which God forbid, I hope he doesn't.
God forbid.
But
I
like I just think that's my one worry when I was watching him. Like offensively, holy crap! I don't think I've ever seen a player like that. Like it really was one of those things where I don't even know how to put it into words. It was one of the most wild things I've ever gotten to watch. But yeah, it
in ter in terms of the physicality stuff, like I think you're right in terms of style of play making a big difference, but I also think it's a point to say like maybe don't expect the world out of him in the first season he plays in the WHL, especially like
he's got
that season granted specifically for exceptional status.
yeah.
Like I almost like it's again we had this conversation in the summer with both Bedard and Wemby, both of whom proved any doubters wrong in terms of being able to play against these guys. So maybe the same thing happens here. But I
Yeah.
do think there's also a big difference between a kid that's probably like just starting to go through puberty versus like fully like almost
He's
fully
like,
grown
isn't
men,
he like
right?
5'10"? I thought I saw that he was like
He's
5'10".
he's 5'11".
Oh,
He's
okay.
5'11".
Yeah,
But
like
it's not like again he's still 14.
he's 5'11", and
That-
but yeah, he looks like he's about 130 pounds.
The difference between I think the difference between somebody who's 14 and somebody who's 20 is even bigger than the difference
Yes.
between somebody who's
Those
18
20-year-old
and somebody
players
who's,
are
like,
200
25.
pounds, 6'2", excuse me. Like it's
Yeah, in the WHL, which to
Can
your
I
point,
can I also
is
say
even
though,
more
I
physical.
still think he'll go to the WHL and probably be close to a point per game in the games that Everett gives him. I just
Yeah,
To
I'm
be
not
to
saying that
be
he is
nice about it,
bad.
my one worry, I don't think he's that bad defensively. I think, like I said, being an average defender isn't a bad thing for
No,
his
it's
case.
not.
It's
No.
not. Like he doesn't need to be a world-breaking like defensive threat. He can be that like that type of like offensive defenseman type thing. I just think that if I'm just gonna be curious what Everett does with him in the WHL
Yeah,
because I think it's gonna be interesting to see his usage. I think that
yeah.
it's gonna be interesting to see what his usage is like. I think that the best scenario you can have is literally putting him out there with the best defensive defenseman you have on your team, and pretty much
And just letting him work.
because
Just letting him
Caleb
go.
and I know this is a nuts thing to say. This is a nuts thing to say, but like I fully think that he can score. He can score at. He's probably a better scorer than pretty much almost anyone in the WHL right now. Probably top 10% in the WHL.
Scorer or scorer as a defenseman?
Probably both. Like he's
Wow. Okay.
bonkers. Like he is legitimately
Okay.
exact. It's just physically like because he is athletic as hell when it comes to speed, when he comes to like his edge work, when it comes to his skating, when it comes to his shooting, all that as good as it's gonna get. His like positioning in the offensive zone, perfect. It just comes down to on the defensive side, he doesn't get punished as much as I think he will in the WHL. He pushes up a lot. Like I don't think I've ever seen a defenseman actually that pushes up as much as he does. Like he pretty much I think in the offensive zone, he's always moving is one thing that I noticed when I was watching him, which isn't a bad thing, but it's something that needs to be watched. Like he's almost always pressing forward. Like if he has the puck on his stick, he's gonna skate around in the offensive zone with it. He's not gonna dump and chase. He's gonna take it in deep himself. Like he when players are behind the net, he'll be the first person stepping into the slot. Like that type of thing, right? Which again is
Yeah.
fine. Like it got Edge a lot of goals, and it's the reason he got 62 points on the season. But it's also the type of thing where in the WHL, when he's playing against faster players who are more skilled and are be able to stop that, what happens when that leads to a 2-on-1 rush the other way? Right? Like that's what I think he's gonna have to deal with is it's gonna be a lot of learning on when to rush up and when he shouldn't. And I think just developing that defensive side a little bit more. Other than that, offensively, I don't think he'll struggle at all. I think he's going to literally walk into the WHL and probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he scored in his debut for all I care. Like, I fully think he's ready for that. Like, offensively, I don't think there's a lot that can stop him. Other than maybe getting pushed around, but that's just because he's 15. We'll see. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
We'll
I,
see. And I think in terms of again, um, just to because you're kind of outlining what you think and expectations,
yeah.
especially in terms of what you saw with skill level. I do want to clarify in terms of like the physicality point. Like not I don't want to like say that I'm like predicting this kid is going to be bad
No,
because I
he
don't
won't
think
be.
so, and
Yeah.
I think that it's also impossible to predict.
Yeah.
But I think it's just important to keep in mind, like we said with Bedard and Wemby, to not. It's the WHL, so there's not going to be as much attention, obviously, which is the good
Yeah.
thing. But I think it'll be important to not write him off if it's like he doesn't like wow everybody in year one.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that's important.
I fully think I think that expectations are high. I think if they're not high, they should be because I like I
Well,
said,
they are because of
I think
the list of players that have gotten this before.
yes,
Right.
yes,
Because
but I more
out
just
of
mean
all
like
of the
when I look at the list that they have currently there. I mean, I'd have to pull it up, but like
I have the list of exceptional players. So out of all of the exceptional players that have been granted status,
yeah,
I'd say two of them have not been too expected. I believe
yeah,
all of them
Sean
made the
Day and
NHL.
like who's the other one?
Joe
Oh,
Valeno, who is
right.
like an average NHL
Yeah,
player.
no, he's still kind
Um,
of getting his feet wet in the NHL.
the rest of them are superstars or at least stars because the rest of the list is Bedard,
Shane Wright.
um, well, Shane Wright, but that's I'm including part of the too early to tell category.
Yeah, I
Connor
guess.
Bedard, Aaron Ekblad, McDavid, Tavares, And then the only other person on this list that we haven't mentioned is Michael Misa, who is the most recent other than
Yeah.
DuPont to get it, and he's still in the CHL.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot he got it, actually. So it wasn't Bedard who was most recent. Okay, that's my bad.
No.
But,
He's actually doing really well, I think. He had 56
yeah.
points and 45 games in the first season.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about him as well. But the one thing that instantly, like Aaron Ekblad, he's he's good offensively. Don't get me wrong. But that's not, I don't remember him much as a prospect. I'm talking about him as an NHL player more than anything. So I could be talking out my ass, I guess. But I don't think of him offensively. I think of him as a very well-rounded defenseman.
Right. Yeah.
And DuPont isn't that yet. Like, he's not well-rounded. He is your, like, Bobby Orr, if you will, right? Like, where nobody wanted Bobby Orr for his defensive ability. I'll put it like that, right? Yeah. Like, it's not to say that Bobby Orr couldn't play defense. Just, like, you know what I mean. Like, it's that type of thing with DuPont. And I think, I think he'll succeed. I fully think that he has that top level skill. So I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of worry there for me at the very least.
Well, yeah, because again, they don't give this title to people for no reason. There's a reason there's only been like 10 players to have it in the last like 20 years, and there's a reason so many of them have turned out to be stars in the NHL.
Yeah. I mean, he just has such a quick first step that I compare it to, like, I think of like McDavid, McKinnon, Cale Makar type first step, right? Like when you watch it, it's that type of thing. Which is why I fully think he'll succeed. I can't imagine that going to waste. I think it'd be harder for him to not succeed at the next level. Mm-hmm. Like, I just think the one world that he might get, if there's a world where the NHL draft comes along in like 2027 or whatever, and he still hasn't improved his defense. Like,
he's probably still
first overall. He's probably still first overall. But I think it's definitely something to watch. I think that because you're going to, once he goes to the WHL, and this is my note to all the viewers out there, you will see the highlights. The highlights will come. I just think the one thing to watch in the next little bit is how he kind of works in the defensive zone. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he goes to the WHL and just succeeds defensively. Who knows? Hopefully, yeah. That'd be cool to see. Maybe I'm wrong. I got to call 2 of his games. Maybe he had 2 defensive games. Or not very defensive games. Who knows? But, like, it's just the type of thing where that was my big note when I watched him. I just thought to myself that I think his defense needs a little work for the level of player he is.
Yeah, and on the bright side, just to wrap it off with one last point, if we want to compare him to the other defensemen to get the exceptional status, and Aaron Ekblad, you brought up a good point in terms of him as a prospect. Yeah. What did he look like before going into the WHL? So I pulling up Aaron Ekblad's elite prospects before he went into the WHL in his first season. Again, I don't know the competition level of the Sun County Panthers. I don't know how.
Where's Ekblad from? Is he Ontario?
He played in the OHL, so I assume.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
It was that was a U16 team, which is important to note because DuPont is playing in a U18 league.
Yeah.
In that one season with the Sun County Panthers, Aaron Ekblad scored 34 points in 30 games. DuPont scored 62.
There you go.
So that shows the difference in offensive ability. Again, like you said.
Not to say Ekblad is still a very strong two-way defenseman,
prospect,
but yeah.
Probably a lot stronger on the defensive side as a 14-year-old than DuPont would be. But that is a very interesting comparison, and it is a giant gap in points, which is probably a decent sign that the offensive firepower will be there.
Yes. No, absolutely. I just think, like, when I say that I think he's like a fourth forward out there, he's a fourth forward. That's what he is. Yeah. Like, he's a fourth forward who plays a little bit further back than the rest of them, is what I would call DuPont. Like, it's I don't know. I honestly, I've said a lot of things that might detract from him, but that's because I think that's the more interesting conversation. Frankly, I still think he will fully succeed. I'm super excited to see what he does at the next level. I think if you haven't, go watch yourself some Landon DuPont highlights, because holy crap, that dude knows how to play hockey. So, I mean, yeah, I'm excited. I'll definitely be a fan as he goes on to the next level of his career and all that.
Yeah. So, we thought he was gone, but we were wrong.
Oh, God, he's back!
Maybe not quite there yet.
Nope, Brady's coming back for another 20 years. He's never
dead.
dead. He's never going to. He's never going to leave us the hell alone.
So this is how you can tell we're in like peak, and we're getting right into the swing of off-season news, where a podcast episode from Deep Cut with Vic Blends is making top NFL headlines. But Brady was on that podcast recently, and he was asked by, this guy. Yeah, you can see. He's asked basically in this situation, like, if there were a quarterback, like there's a team that's going into the playoffs and the quarterback's got hurt and they need someone as an emergency, basically, would Brady come in? Like, would Brady pick up the phone and actually play for a team again at age, what is he, 46?
Whatever age he is.
46, 47.
Yeah, doesn't matter. You get the gist.
Yeah. You get the gist. He's old.
Yeah.
But he basically said, he's not opposed to it. He listed potential teams as the podcast host brought up
49ers.
The Niners.
And then he brought up New England.
Yeah. And as well as the Raiders.
Yeah.
And Brady's I can read the whole quote in terms of what Brady said. So he said, "I'm not opposed to it. I don't know if they're going to let me if I become an owner in the NFL. I'm always going to be in good shape, always be able to throw the ball. So to come in for a little bit, like MJ coming back, I don't know if they let me, but I wouldn't be opposed to doing it." And before we get to the MJ part, because I know you have something to say about that.
Yeah.
To clear up the owner side of it, it's because Brady purchased a stake in the Raiders, I believe, when he was still a player. It hasn't been finalized yet, but now that he's not playing anymore, it's looking more and more like that's going to go through. And so I think this article from The Score that I pulled says that it could happen, but he would basically need to have votes from like a 2/3 majority of owners to be able to play. Which
and I'm sure okay. I was gonna say, do you really think all the owners are gonna be okay with like New England bringing back, like they're approving?
Yeah, because the Patriots are shit.
Okay, but let's say in this scenario we're suggesting in this hypothetical, Patriots are going into the playoffs without a quarterback. Keyword into the playoffs. They are in the playoff race, going into the playoffs without a quarterback. Do you really think all the other owners are going to say yes? Yes, let them have the GOAT. Even if he's 47 or whatever.
Yeah, because he's 47. I don't think they'd care.
Okay, well, then there you go.
I don't know. Because, I mean, even at the end of his Tampa Bay time, you could tell, like, he's not the same.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think obviously Brady is going to be better than whatever backup you have. Like, if again, it's the same example the guy gives, but if the Chiefs have Mahomes go down, like, and they call Brady, he's going to be better than what Carson Wentz can put out there, probably, right?
He'll probably throw less picks, I guess.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And especially in the playoffs, because, that's where Brady makes his money, right?
Yeah.
That's why he's been so good, is because of how good those teams were in the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I know it's not something that is probably going to happen.
No.
It's entirely a hypothetical situation, kind of designed to make headlines in the offseason. But it's an interesting one. And again, he brought up the example of like MJ coming back with the Wizards after retiring. And judging by your reaction, I don't think that
didn't go well.
Yeah.
That didn't really go well for MJ, did it? That's what I think is funny. It's basically in the quote, he makes it sound like MJ heroically came back for the team that he owned and carried the Wizards to a championship. No, MJ came back to the Wizards, sucked for 2 years, and he didn't suck, but he didn't do anything. He didn't really do it. He was fine. Yeah, he put up like 18 points and then retired 2 years later. Like, it didn't. For a lot of people, it ruined MJ for a little bit. A lot of people, really, including MJ, by the way, like to pretend that Wizards run never happened. That's why the whole Last Dance is what it is, right? Because everyone wants to pretend that MJ ran out into the sunset, when in reality, no, no, he really didn't, right? Like it's.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think the one difference in
ahead.
that comparison would be in terms of like it not being 2 full seasons, because I think the hypothetical that the guy presents is the only way that he will ever come back.
Yeah, I don't think he'd come back for a full season. I don't think he could. I don't think a team would give him a chance to.
There would be a team. There would be a team who would give him a chance. But I don't think he would want to do that at this point. But I do think if it's a 1-game playoff thing and they lose and he plays bad, nobody's going to care. Like, it's not going to affect his legacy at all. It'll be like, well, he came back and he tried and that was a cool novelty. It's not going to be like we saw him every Sunday and was like, oh my God, he's terrible, get us up.
And he just, like, looked like a shadow of himself.
Yeah, like, it wouldn't be that. It would be like, oh, it was an experiment for 1 game. It's like when Marshawn Lynch came back for the Seahawks. Do you remember that?
Yeah, okay.
When
Beast
sense,
Mode
came back.
Yeah. Scored
Beast
1
Mode
touchdown.
came back like week 16, got a touchdown against the Niners, and that's all I needed, really. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, you get your little hit of nostalgia, and it was like at the Seahawks, like that's actually, the more I think about it, a good comparison, because thinking back to that season, the reason they signed Beast Mode back was because literally
Injuries.
every one of their running backs was injured. It was like Chris Carson,
you know what?
injured, Rashad Penny injured. Like, I don't know if they had Travis Homer yet or whatever, whoever their third running back was, injured. It might have been his rookie year, because I think it was 2019. Okay. But
well, you know what? You know what's the thought that you know what's my memory of that of his comeback is, if that was 2019, that would have been Madden 20, I guess. So Madden 20, they put him in the game, but in EA's infinite wisdom, they didn't think, oh no, this is an older Beast Mode coming back. Let's put a 90 overall Beast Mode on the Seahawks. And I just remember having a lot of fun online for like the 2 weeks that was the case for. Because they quickly adjusted his overall after that. But there's like a 1 week, like it was probably the week 16 or week 17 roster of that, where it was just like 88 overall Beast Mode on like the Seahawks. Yeah, that was a fun Madden year. Yeah. That's my memory of that comeback, but otherwise, anyway.
Yeah. To the point of that, it's like that doesn't affect how people see Marshawn.
No, not at all.
Right. And it's the same kind of thing where injuries kind of forced him back into it, and he was like, sure, why not?
I also think that Marshawn Lynch is more of a why not kind of guy than Brady is. I think it has to have a realistic outcome. I don't think Brady would come back if he didn't think that he could go out there and win it. I don't think Marshawn went out there thinking he was going to win the starting job back. I think he went out there for shits and giggles.
I think you go all the way to the other side with Brady, though, because Marshawn would be like, fuck it, we ball, I'm just going to do it anyway. Brady would be like, I don't care how old I am, I'm going to win it. I don't think it would matter what situation you put him in. He probably thinks he can win the Super Bowl. The one other thing to consider in this is the Fox money that he's got laying on the table to do broadcasting. That would be the one thing where I'd see, like, because he's going to be their number one analyst, right? We've talked about this, like, just the injustice that Greg Olson is getting booted from the booth in favor of Brady.
And now their number one pride and joy analyst, who probably won't even be good at it. We'll see. Like,
like maybe by the end of the season, if there's an injury, Fox wants him out, and they're like, Greg Olson, please come back for the playoffs. Maybe it'll be good for all parties, but
maybe he'll just wear a microphone underneath his helmet.
It's like, who's the other?
It goes from sideline reporter to on-field reporter.
There's a Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson. So it's like Kevin Burkhardt's like trying to talk to Brady while he's on the field. Like, you see, Kevin, what are you doing? Ah, fuck. Like, you see, Kevin, you got the corner blitz over there, and then you got this motherfucker coming me down.
Yeah,
And I just
yeah,
feel
just like it's just like the thing where they like draw on the screen, right? Where it's just like it's Brady breaking down why he got through an interception. It was just like, yeah, you know, I was like, if you watch him, he's cutting across the middle here, and then this asshole,
Yeah.
and then this asshole
Look at
just
the playbook. Look at the playbook. He's supposed to be here, and he's not.
he wasn't quick enough. He didn't get to the right spot. That you can't say that wouldn't be absolute comedy, but oh,
I'd watch that.
I would too. That'd be awesome.
Probably going to be way more than any games way more entertaining than any games he's actually going to commentate. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, we'll see how good he actually is. I don't really have high hopes. He doesn't really seem like he doesn't seem like the type.
He doesn't have the character. He doesn't have the charisma.
No. Like Tony Romo has that. Like I would give that to him. Like I don't necessarily think he's the best announcer in the world, but I still think that he's good enough.
Well, we don't know. We have no clue.
No, I'm talking about Romo.
We haven't
not
heard.
Brady.
Oh, Romo. Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
I think he's fine, but he's like I don't know.
I think Romo was good, but I really like Romo. I think I like Romo a lot more than other people. Like obviously he's not perfect, but
Yeah.
I just think he just loves football so much and is infectious, and that's what I like.
Okay,
about it.
and that
He's
is
not
fair.
perfect. Like I don't think he's I don't think he's
I just
necessarily
mean-
like a good announcer in terms of like the professional side of it.
And that's what I was
But
about to say.
I think he has the enthusiasm that makes up for it, in my opinion. I know not all people feel the same way.
Well,
I
I
don't
just
think Brady has that.
no.
Brady likes to get, he's not people like, oh Jim, I don't know Jim. You know?
Yeah, I was gonna say fundamentally I don't think he's that good of an announcer, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like he has that other side that really you is so rare. Like I think that's just I think it's such just a fun I don't know. When you can tell that the person's having fun calling it, I think that definitely does come across, right? Like that's like so yeah, I definitely get what you mean for that. But yeah, I don't think Brady has that at all. I think Brady has his moments.
I think it's more like
I think
Drew
he
Brees.
can be a funny guy, but like I no, I can't imagine him going, Jim, look at it, look what's happening out there, Jim.
Yeah,
Watch this, Jim. It's gonna be
that.
play action.
Oh, look at the motion, Jim. He's moving over.
He's moving around.
I can't see Brady. I feel like the one thing I'm scared of is that he's gonna be like Drew Brees. I had such high hopes for Drew Brees as a analyst, but it was just like too technical almost to where he wasn't exciting. Right.
Yeah, and I can see that with Brady.
I think for Brady to work, it would probably he'd have to be in the middle. Where honestly, like I think Chris Collinsworth is probably one of the guys who does it best. Where like Chris Collinsworth, obviously former player, knows his shit, but he also like gets into the game. He's not Tony Romo levels, but you know, like he's still got his quirks. So, like like here's a guy, like all the Chris Collinsworth things. Like he's got some energy to him.
Yeah.
I'm scared that Brady will not have that, and it'll just be boring and like bad.
He's going to be. And this is the thing that I've said. I've had to teach a lot of people how to do this type of, like, just, like, play-by-play and stuff like that in the last year. And the way that I've kind of explained it to a lot of people is just that, to simplify it as much as possible, there is two styles. There is your yelling WWE announcer, oh, he's at the top rope! And, like, all of that. And then there's the other side of things, where it's your boring, like... just going through the motions, analytical announcer. And you could probably think in your head of people who are really good on this side of the spectrum, people who are really good on this side of the spectrum, and people who are really good in the middle. And I think the hardest part as an early announcer is trying to figure out where you land on that spectrum for a lot of people. A good point. Which I think that Brady is going to be way over here in like the analytical. Like I don't think he's gonna have a lot of energy. I think if he can find that energy and surprise a lot of people, then he probably can be good. But
yeah, I agree with. I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this. As someone who is like currently in school and getting consistent practice at broadcasting, what do you think it means for Brady to just literally go into the biggest job in the world with no prior experience?
Like how does that work? Like think about you
Well-
commentating your first game and putting that on a stage in front of like
Okay, that would have been ugly.
10 million people.
To be fair, like, it'd be different if he was doing. He's an analyst. He's not a play-by-play commentator. There is a big difference.
Right.
If he was doing play-by-play, he would land on his face immediately. Like that's something that's color.
There's
is
a reason that the former players don't do that.
Exactly, right? Play-by-play is not something you can go up. Like, there are people, I have seen people who are just naturally good at it, and it's usually pretty impressive. But even the people who are naturally good at it right off the jump, which I was not at all. So I'm very thankful my first game was not on Fox. But, like, it's... Most of the people I've seen that, they still don't have that thing. Like, they're always just missing that. Like, I've seen people who are, like, technically really good play-by-play. Like, people. Like, they know exactly what to talk about. Their pacing's really good and all that. But they don't have the energy. Like, I've seen that in the last little bit. And that... Or they'll be the other way around. Where they're, like, so much energy, but they have no idea what they're talking about. Like, they went into it full confidence, and I respect the crap out of that. But you gotta work on some... like, a few minor things, right?
You gotta do some research.
Yeah, there's usually, like, something missing there. Like, with... with color, it's a little different. Like, if you have the knowledge for it, a good play-by-play commentator can make you look good. Look like you know what you're talking about.
And Kevin Burkhardt is a very good play-by-play.
Then there you go. Right? Like, I don't think Tom Brady will look bad unless he actually is just boring. Like, most of the best color commentators are good at it because they're really entertaining speakers.
Yes, and that is the fear because we talked about with a good play-by-play guy covering for him. Drew Brees is the example I keep getting up, and he had Mike Tirico, who's doing Sunday Night Football now, right? Mike Tirico is a very good play-by-play guy. Yeah, but Drew Brees still got axed after a year.
That's why I've worked with color people who are very analytical, and I think that's the side that most people go with it. I've also worked with people who are very high energy with it, and those people are so fun to work with. Like, the people who are they're basically just comedians, like, as color people. And Brady's just not that. Like, if there's a world where Brady can, like, bring some comedy into that side of thing and, like, he'll maybe have a bit of charisma with it, he'll be good at it. He'll be fine. But, like, I think color, I just want to emphasize the fact that the hardest part about color is knowing your shit. Brady knows his shit. That box is checkmarked, right? That's the easy part.
That was never in question.
That was never in question. It's just how he can kind of show it. Like, it's just how charismatic you are after that when it comes to that type of thing. And, I mean, we'll see.
We'll see.
He has some funny stuff out there that I think we've all seen of him, pretty much telling Josh Allen that someone's going to leave him and stuff like that. Like, there's clips out there of Brady being a funny guy, but he seems more like a funny dad whenever I watch anything that he does.
And that could be fun.
That could be fun.
That energy is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I'm not saying it's hopeless. I just think I think that the odds are not in his favor necessarily, but it's been done by a lot of people. Like, there's a reason a lot of color analysts for the last 50 years have been former players. There's a reason it's done over and over and over again, and it's because it works. Right? Like, it does work because there's no one who can tell you more about the game than someone who is out there.
Than someone who's been there.
Yeah,
that's very true.
So, I mean, who knows? But
there's a reason it's not always the most famous. There's a reason it's a guy like Chris Collinsworth, who wasn't the famous quarterback. It's because he's got other skills. Also, just to wrap up the whole conversation, I think it's probably a pretty good indication of how likely Brady is to come back that we spent most of this conversation talking about his broadcasting.
That's probably the more interesting part of the conversation. I actually did forget that was where this conversation started.
Yeah.
Brady coming back? Hell no. Put on a mic, asshole.
That's probably what's going to happen. Again, it's another one that's an interesting hypothetical, but probably not realistic.
No, the funny thing is I'm a lot more excited to listen to what he sounds like on a mic than on the field.
Too. I honestly
like I don't feel the need to see him throw 20-yard checkdowns again. I'm okay. Like it's not like that's an exciting outcome. It's not like he was ever the most exciting player in the last couple of years.
Throwing slants to Rashee Rice in January. Oh
boy. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh god. I hope not. Unless he's really bad in the commentary booth, then maybe that'd be like a funny moment, like we were talking about, like Tony Romo going, "Oh Jim, oh Jim." No, it'd be the opposite, where it's just like, "Oh Jim, I have to leave the booth. You know, this season has been so fun, and I will forever honor our memories up here in the booth. But I must go football now." And
he's got a contract, so
yeah. Everyone
It doesn't go
involved.
well, it's really gonna not go well.
Yeah.
They're gonna lose Greg Olson, and they're gonna be like, well,
Oopsie doopsie. That's not good.
yeah.
Which sucks, because, I mean, I don't think... The fact that Greg Olson was actually good at it is kind of just depressing for Fox, because I don't know... Other than that first game, are that many more people going to be tuning in because the color commentator's Tom Brady? Like, past game... Once the novelty kind of falls off, like, past, like, let's say, like, past game 3, I don't think it matters.
I think they're just I don't think they're betting on him drawing in people necessarily. I feel like they're betting on him being good.
Which is kind of sad, because they had someone who was good.
It's not a good bet.
No,
it's not a good bet.
You're betting.
It's not saying
you're
it
betting
can't
on the
happen, but
goat
it's not a
being
good
the
bet.
goat of commentary. Which, I mean,
You can't. It's hard being the goat of.
I will say, if he actually wants to be good at it, like if he is going into this with the same, like, you know, work ethic he went into football
this year to like prepare and research.
Oh,
Like,
well then
apparently
sweet.
He's been really serious about
Okay,
it.
well then, you know what? If he's legitimately serious about it, I think he'll be good at it. Because I'm personally just a believer that, like, for example, with my personal broadcasting career so far, that I have no skill. It's all just been me beating my skull into a wall until I eventually figured it out. Like, I just think if as my piece of advice from doing it for the last 2 years would just be like, if you work at it, you'll figure it out, right? Like, eventually you get there, and I'm sure he'll get there, but
Yeah,
we'll see how much skill he has from the jump.
Gotten some practice. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, lack of practice is going to be a big thing, but we'll see.
Well, it's just, again, how serious is he taking it? And if he's taking it serious, he'll be good. If he isn't, he won't be.
Tom Brady, he's taking it seriously.
Well, then there you go. So, in some of the bigger NBA news, not really NBA, I guess it's NCAA. It's both. It's both news. It's basketball news. Bronny James has officially announced that he is heading to the NBA draft to... I mean, his rankings have not been very good throughout the year. I don't even know how to sell this, really. It's really an interesting thing, because we were even talking about it before the podcast here. I was going to go into this, like, here's the behind the scenes in Simon's brain when going into the intro here. I'm like, what can I say to really sell this segment? And in my head, I was thinking to myself, you got to talk about Bronny. You got to hype up the prospect. And then I thought about it. I was like, I'm drawing a blank. Like, there's not a lot as for the prospect. It's the fact that everyone knows LeBron wants to play with him. You're drafting LeBron James's final dance, or last dance. Like, and I think people will be, especially people who know LeBron would want to play there. So your New York Knicks, Miami Heat, Lakers, if he goes to the Lakers. Like, there are teams out there that will definitely, there's no way on earth this kid goes undrafted. Just to say that. Throw that out there.
Wow. Okay, you want to get into that right away? I think he absolutely goes undrafted.
Wait, really?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay, I'll let you go first then.
Okay. So,
I think your take's a bit more interesting than mine.
I thought this was like the baseline take. I didn't think that was spicy at all, because first of all, like, so Bronny, I think if you look at because there's so many things with this. First of all, he's not just entering the NBA draft; he's also entering the transfer portal. Like, he's doing both. I think what he's doing,
which is a smart choice.
I think it is too, because I think what he's doing is he's gauging interest from NBA teams to be like, will I get drafted? And I think if the answer is no, then he'll return to college.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is. And I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think any NBA teams are going to be interested in
You don't think the Lakers take him in the second round?
No, because, I mean, again, this is the one difference with basketball, is that there is 2 rounds, and most
of the second round players don't even make the roster.
Yeah, and even those second round players have been players who have been like very good in college. So I'm looking at this is that take people who are watching this take with a grain of salt that I am the most casual both like both NBA and NCAA basketball fan.
Yeah.
I watch March Madness and that's about it. But like there's been players who I was like I'm looking up, like Zach Edey, who recently has won Player of the Year in college 2 years in a row. But because there's conversations about like his style of play not working in the NBA, most people projected him as a second round pick, even though he basically just carried his team to the national championship game. That guy is probably going in the second round, and like you said, may not even make the roster.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so there's that where you can literally be the best player in college basketball, and get drafted in the second round and still not have a great chance to
I
make the
just thought
roster.
about it. No, Zach Edey's not going in the second round.
You think he's going in the first round?
He's probably going like 15th area.
So I've seen him. I think the March Madness boosted him. But if you look at popular mock drafts, he was going in the second round up until like this month, and now he's going late 20s.
Yeah,
what I saw.
Yeah, I saw the estimate. I was hearing
borderline first round.
I was gonna say I was hearing him as high as like 11th. I think that's the highest I heard him, but that's unlikely.
That's as someone who doesn't really know basketball. Even then I feel like, from what I've seen from people who know more about the sport than I do, that's not going to happen. That's not how NBA teams view it. The other thing to take into consideration in the NBA draft is it's not like the NFL, where the only players who are coming into the NFL are coming in from college.
Yes, that's true.
Players from most often the best players that you get in, like Alexandre Sarr, I think is the number one projected pick, and he I think is from France. And Wemby was from.
That's not.
Or no, that guy was from Australia actually. The new guy. Wemby's from France. You know, like Luka coming in. All of these players are coming in international. That fills up a bunch of spots on the board too, right? Like, that's why I think Bronny's going to go undrafted, to bring it back to the main point, because there's so many good players from not just college, where even the best college players might not get drafted. And Bronny was a bench player in college who didn't even do that much. And this isn't to bash Bronny, because I've been of the opinion that if you have heart failure and then come back to play the same season, maybe you should be cut a little bit of slack.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that he's entering the NBA draft is a little bit of bad optics in that way, for him, because it kind of, I do think it's still a smart move, but I can see also how it comes off as, I'm LeBron James' son, I could just get into the NBA based on that alone. Because if he gets drafted, that's the only reason he gets drafted. And I don't think even that is enough. I don't even think that is enough. Like, are you gonna waste one of your two? Because the NBA draft is only 2 rounds.
You're making him sound like he can't do anything on the court, which isn't true. The one thing he did show in college.
It's not.
Yeah, and I know that's not the reason.
And you have no idea.
That's not the point you're trying to make. I'm just trying to jump on this here. But like, it's the big thing that I've noticed people point out is the fact that he's actually very strangely, just because of the fact that he hasn't had any hype, or like as an actual player, I should say, or he hasn't had a lot. Like, it actually feels like he's been underrated a little bit. He is actually a very skilled defender, is what the conversation a lot of people have had.
Yes.
He is a very skilled defender.
His shooting is the part that's an issue. I think
which is something that he did not show at all before the college game, and which again could be because this season maybe should be a write-off for him a little bit. Like you said, give the kid a little bit of slack. Like he went through a lot in the last little bit, and even being able to get back to the court, I should say a lot about just his, he's had a long year, I think, is kind of the sense that a lot of people have had. And I have no doubt that he'd have a better sophomore year, but I think he does get drafted. I think he'll...
Yeah.
I just think about it like this, Caleb. Like, the Lakers... I could see the Lakers taking a second-round pick on him. I think just to keep big ol' GM LeBron James happy, I could see the Lakers taking him
for 1 year?
Yes.
For 1 year?
Yes.
Of LeBron?
Yes. Because
I don't even
Caleb,
think NBA
as much as you want to say, like, well, it's one roster spot. There's a lot of players on NBA rosters who don't play at all.
Yeah, I'm not. It's not the roster spot. It's the pick, and I know it's a second round pick, but like in the NBA draft, there's only 2 rounds. It's still wasting draft
Sure.
capital.
But you're using that second round pick to keep your star player happy. You're bringing on a player who, as much as everybody has again basically wrote him off, he still has potential. Like, he's still a player who could turn into a good player.
And I'm not saying that he isn't, but I'm saying at this point he's such a project that, like, I don't know. I don't think it'll be good for his career either.
Probably
because
not.
then at that point the only reason he'd be going is to play with his dad.
Yeah.
And I just don't see how, like, he actually gets developed at that point. He's just gonna get run over.
I'm just saying that I think I think there's a difference between what's good for him and what I think is going to happen. Yeah. I think if there wasn't a world where we see LeBron or Bronny playing in the NBA, maybe not playing, maybe riding the bench in the NBA next season, then he wouldn't have basically put his name in the hat at all, is more what I mean. I think that there is absolutely at least a bit of interest at the very least in the second round. Will a team use a first round pick on him? No way in hell. But will the Lakers potentially use a late second round pick on him just to bring him onto the team? I can't see why not. Like, I have a hard reason really seeing like why it'd be better to bring on a player who you're probably going to cut anyway than bring on your star player's kid. Like, at that point you're signing him to make him happy, for one. And also it's just a thing of like
it's a pure nepotism thing.
Yes. No, Caleb, but the thing is I'm not trying to argue against that. I'm saying that there has been
arguing that that's how the world works.
Yes, pretty much.
I think my point is just like, yes, I think that is how the world works. I agree with you.
Yeah.
There's a certain point where I think even nepotism doesn't carry that far. It's just like, I don't know. He's a bench player in college, and I'm not saying that he can't be anything good. I'm saying that this is exactly the reason why you stick it out in college for at least one more year.
Yeah.
To put some.
No, I'm saying if we were
going to a team that actually wants you.
There is a difference between what I think he should do, because if we're talking about what Bronny should do, yes, stay in college.
Yeah.
Stay in college, work on your game, work on your shot, develop that like range that we saw from you in high school. Become a bit more of an offensive player, because really all he needs is an offensive weapon, and he's there, I think. Like, if he brings his averages up and he starts to work on his ability to shoot, I think he's got enough. Right? Like, if he can, he'd be showing that he doesn't necessarily have the potential to be that top level talent that a lot of people might be thinking he might have for his last name, but he'd be good enough to make the NBA because he is a strong defensive player who can shoot. And there is a place for players like that, right? And I think that he'd be coming in, if he came in this year, it would be basically just as a defensive first player who hopefully has some time to work on his shot in the back end somewhere, right? Like, you just have to hope.
You almost compare this to, you know what's a good comparison for this, I think?
What?
In terms of another very good basketball player who keeps a family member on the roster to keep him happy.
Giannis.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
It's the Giannis stuff that makes me pretty sure that something like this will probably end up happening. Like, because I mean,
that's the precedent you point to.
Yeah, hasn't really hurt the Bucks too much, has it?
No, although they're not doing very well right now. But
yeah, but I just mean, if they won a championship with him on the roster, like, they're not doing bad because he's on the team.
I'm not saying that like having Bronny on a roster is going to hurt them. I think we both agree that it's not good for him. I think in terms of like what a team will actually do, I just don't see the value there for a team, because I also don't think 40-year-old LeBron, like, maybe if you're getting like prime like Miami Heat LeBron, then it's like absolutely spend a pick on this kid just to get that.
Oh my God.
Like, at that
Caleb,
point,
you're basically trading a second round pick for 1 year of LeBron There's no
For 1
way
year,
on earth no one's not willing to do that. Every team
I don't
on
know.
the
I don't
planet
know.
would be up for doing that. It's LeBron James. I don't care if he's 5 years old. Like, I don't care if he's 5, I don't care if he's 50, it don't matter. Like, it's LeBron, right? It's
Okay. That, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Like, you make good points. The other thing that I think is important to bring up. Now, I'm not saying a trade, like, let's say Bronny gets drafted. Obviously, the move is going to be then, is LeBron going there? And the answer probably will be yes. But I think the issue, again, this is going completely off memory based on when we last kind of talked about this, but I'm pretty sure LeBron has 1 more year left on his Lakers deal. I may need to be fact checked on that.
I can check that. Yeah.
But I think when we were looking at that, it kind of lined up well, where LeBron would play this upcoming season with the Lakers, and then after that, his contract would be up, and that's when Bronny was going to enter the league. Now that Bronny's potentially entering the league a year early, you say they're basically trading a second-round pick for a year of LeBron. Well, what are you going to have to trade in addition to that now?
That's a fair point. But I more just mean, like, let's say that's why I'm saying that I think the most likely team to take him is probably the Lakers.
Just to keep LeBron?
Just to keep LeBron. Or even just to keep him happy. Like, just to go, like, sure, why not, type thing. I mean, it'll be LeBron's age 40 season. Like, he will be 40 years old
he will be 40
during
years old.
that season. So, it's... I think that, if anything, it might just be the type of thing where the Lakers might just do it as, like, give LeBron his last run into the sunset moment type thing. Playing alongside his son, who will play 2 minutes a night.
Yeah. Do you think... A couple points. Because I do think yes, that is, like, I could see it happening a little bit more, but I still don't think he gets drafted. And I think a couple of points to that side of it. The Giannis comparison. It's not like, I don't even know how to say his brother. Thanasis.
Thanasis, yep.
He did not get drafted, right? He's brought in as a free agent. Okay. I believe. That's something I could probably also
I will
check.
say that I think Bronny has a bit more hype behind him than Thanasis did.
Yes, obviously. But just to make that comparison at least. And then also, I do think NBA GMs have a bit more pride in their scouting than to just say, fuck it, we do this for LeBron. Unless I'm off, you have an entire scouting department. And it's
you also have an entire lead GM. Do you think LeBron's that prideful of his scouting department?
I know that's the joke, but I mean, like,
it's a joke, but it's also the truth.
I don't know because again, I don't know the NBA as well, but like, you look at the upcoming NFL draft, it's like you'll prepare in months and months. Like, the scouts, like, you have a huge scouting department that is working like years in advance on these prospects. Do you really want to like throw all that work out if they've got a guy they actually really want in the second because they want to pick LeBron's kid? Like, that just throws out all the work the scouts have done.
Or do you think that the Lakers have probably thought for the last year that there's a good chance they're using that second on LeBron's kid?
I don't think so, because it was the surprise that he's coming out this year anyways.
Yes.
I don't know.
It was a surprise, but I don't know if... I mean, they do have a bit of an insider. That's all I'm saying.
I guess.
The insider who lives in the same house as him, right? Like, it's...
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think... Well, the one other thing I was going to say to that point was, if this were a draft, like any other sport, where there's like 7 rounds, absolutely Bronny gets drafted. Where it's the kind of thing where it's like, throw away a 5th, throw away a 6th, I don't care.
That's okay, but Caleb, a second-round pick in the NBA is pretty much the same as a 5th or a 6th in other leagues.
I guess, and I guess maybe that's where my blind spot is.
Yeah.
But
Because
I don't know.
I would say in the NBA, when I'm talking about the draft, I almost would say the end of the first round in the NBA is more comparative to like what you'd see like
Day 2 NFL draft.
exactly. Where in the NFL, you can get very skilled players in the second and third round, while towards the end of the first and even into the 20s, usually you can still get good players, don't get me wrong, but it falls off pretty quick. So
Okay.
I think that in that
is a good
sense,
point.
let's say the Lakers go deep in the playoffs, like or deep-ish, right? And we're living in the world where they have like the 50th pick, right? Like something like that. I don't think it's that far off to think that they might use it on LeBron's kid. I don't know. I could definitely see it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess so, and that is a good point. I'd be very interested, just because again, a very casual basketball fan, but I'm still gonna stick to my belief that he's not getting drafted, because of all the reasons I've brought up before. But I also do like looking at mock drafts from people who know more than me. I don't think I've ever seen him mocked to go drafted.
Oh, I don't think he'll
Like,
go first round. I don't think he's a good enough talent.
In general,
Talent-wise?
in general.
Okay.
I don't
but,
think
like,
I haven't seen him mocked anywhere. Like first or second round.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm way off then. Who knows? I just mean, in my personal opinion, I think that there's a world where that ends up happening.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
It'll
definitely
be really
see.
interesting. What is that coming up in June? June probably is when all
yes.
these NHL.
Yep. Think so.
We're closing in on you know what that's crazy is having our draft conversations last year coming in on a year of trick play. Wild.
Oh, we're not that close. It's got to be like
We're
4 months off. We started it in like July, didn't we?
Did we?
I think
Well,
so.
we were having conversations with the draft, so and I feel like that's not that far
Weren't
off.
we having post-draft conversations though?
I think it was like during the draft. Do you have it?
I'm looking for it right now. I think I totally just like played like the intro of one of the episodes. 9 months, so 3 months. 3 months off.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
We're coming to play.
We got to come up with
That
something for
was-
1 year of trick play. Also, happy 69 subscribers. I think that's something worth celebrating.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. That is a number worth celebrating.
That
Nice.
is a worth. Yeah, nice. Hell yeah. Make sure to not subscribe.
Yeah.
Don't
we're
you
good
dare
where we are.
ruin it.
We're good where we are. We don't need.
It was funny though, with like because we went up by like 3 or 4 throughout the week as like the videos like went up in views, and then we just stuck at 69 for like 4 days.
We're still at 60.
We are no, we are. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's been like 4 days of sitting it there, so I'm like, you know what? I'm not even mad about it.
It's a nice looking number.
It's a nice looking number. I'm okay with that.
Thank you guys so much for watching Trick Play this week. If you want more of us, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube, check out the Instagram, Twitter, all the good stuff. If you want us on audio platforms, there's in a new room every fucking week, so it's very hard to find out where it is. It's this side. Boom.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, Fresh Take Network. That's where you can find us. If you are on an audio platform like Spotify, Apple Podcast, look up Fresh Take Network. We'll be in that feed. Anyways, my shout out for the week is going to be, I kind of like came up with this last second, but I saw this headline today and I was like, okay, this is a cause I can get behind. My shout out is to Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow recently went on the New Heights podcast. If you don't know what that is, it's the Travis and Jason Kelsey podcast. So Burrow went on that podcast and he was talking about taunting. And he said he's very much pro taunting. He said, we're all grown adults that work really hard at what we do, and sometimes we'd like to show it. I'm not going to get my feelings hurt if someone sacks me and taunts me, like, you made a play. Yes, it's the most obvious thing in the world, and it's so, like, frustrating to see stuff like that get flagged, but it's literally the smallest action in the world. Things are more fun when you have guys like DK Metcalf, like,
verbally abusing the Niners cornerback and getting into a fight with him. That makes things so much better and so much more entertaining in the league. So it's not like anything's going to change, obviously, but props to Joe Burrow for saying what everybody was thinking.
I mean, yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees with it. It's
I don't
just
think
pretty
anybody
dumb.
disagrees with that, other than like
they're
NFL refs,
full, they're
you know,
full-grown
like,
adults
or NFL executives.
Yeah,
They can say whatever they would like. I don't know, unless you're like saying slurs or something. Like, at that point, throw the
Yeah.
flag and then fine. But like, say what you want to say.
You know what? I think my shout out this week I'm gonna go down. It took me a second to think about what I was gonna do with mine, but I think mine is gonna go to something to an event I didn't even watch. I watched it 2 hours after it finished through Twitter clips after I heard about the wildness that had occurred during it, and that is the WrestleMania that apparently happened over the weekend.
Yeah.
And I got invited to go like talk about it with Josh, who runs like a Fresh Take and all that. And I ended up not doing it just because I had a feeling I didn't want to. I don't know. I'm not big into wrestling anymore. Like that was something I liked as a kid.
Yeah.
But like I watched like the final main event pretty much like through Twitter clips, like a minute at a time.
Yeah.
And like, holy smokes, that was cool. Like that, like I don't know how much you know at all about wrestling, Caleb.
So
Like in your life.
I don't. Yeah. So I don't know anything, but to your point, I actually heard a lot about this and did kind of go down the rabbit hole of seeing what happened. And this is as someone who like pretty much actively doesn't like it and thinks it's kind of stupid. But I was kind of intrigued by what happened. And I was like, the fuck is going on here? Like you've got The Rock and John Cena is here. And then like, I was like, what the hell is going on?
So
this is
cool.
Very entertaining, which I guess is the point.
It was like 10 years. You know what's the funny thing? The thing that I loved about it is because the whole story is Roman's been on this 3-year-long like title reign. Nobody's been able to beat him.
Yeah.
And he loses to basically trauma from something that happened so long ago that it was back when I watched wrestling. Which is what I thought was so cool about it. Like he has a moment where he's like there's Seth Rollins on the ground and there's Cody Rhodes on the ground and he's holding a chair and he has the choice between who he wants to beat the crap out of basically. And he just remembers from 10 years ago when Seth Rollins betrayed him and he just hit him with the chair. God, that's so cool. Like, because that's literally like going back. Oh, it made me want to get. I'm probably not going to, but it made me want to get back into wrestling again because it was just like, I don't know. I got out of it because the stories were dumb, but like this whole thing, like it was just like, holy smokes, that was cool. Like you have like you bring back the Undertaker, you bring back John Cena. It's like this. Basically, it's literally like fan service in the best possible way.
Yeah. And that's cool. And I mean, I don't think I could ever get into it because I think the whole idea.
I was going to ask why in
scripted,
particular
scripted content.
Why in particular
masquerading
do you
as
think
a
it's dumb?
sport?
Okay, but it's not masquerading
the
as a
scripted
sport
nature of
anymore.
it.
Like it's they have press conferences afterwards talking about the storylines. Like they treat it like a movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't particularly like. That's not why I watch. Part of the greatest like charm that I find in watching sports is that the stories that happen in like the NFL or MLB or NHL, that they're all like natural and like real and not scripted. Like I think that's part of the big appeal for me.
So do you hate movies?
No, I don't hate movies, but I think I don't know. It is something that's arbitrary.
Yeah.
And I know like I don't want to like hate on people who like it because it's like that doing that is stupid. Because if you like it, then like good for you, and I can see the appeal. I just don't think it's necessarily something that I could see myself getting into. I also just don't love combat sports in general.
Okay,
like
that's more fair. I think my argument for it as someone who doesn't watch it anymore, but liked it a lot. And I didn't stop watching it because I grew up and realized it was unrealistic. Because I was still old enough. I stopped watching it when I was like 14, and at that point, I knew it was fake. I mean, you'd have to be an idiot. But I liked it for the fact that it was legitimately kind of an art in a way, in the same way that like acting and making movies and that type of thing is, right? Where the stories behind it and like the skill it takes to be able to jump off a ladder from like 40 feet in the air, do 6 flips and like basically land on someone. Like there's a lot of talent that goes into it. I stopped watching it because there wasn't any of this. It just became shit. Like the storylines dried up. The people they had running behind the scenes. I don't know if you've heard those stories, Caleb. But
No.
Oh my God. You know what? It's a very disturbing rabbit hole. So I'll give you everyone out there. If that's a rabbit hole if you want to go down the Vince McMahon rabbit hole from like January, December.
Oh, I know he's been shady.
Do you know what he did? Like what came out?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
It's not a topic that I want to talk about on the podcast, and it's not a topic that we need to.
I can make guesses. Yeah.
It's not a topic anyone wants to talk about. But it's certainly a rabbit hole for that whole thing. Ever since he's been canned, all I've been hearing is that it's been like a resurgence of like the Attitude Era is what they called it, where like everyone was swearing and like bleeding, and it was just actually well done. It wasn't because the reason wrestling became as dumb as it did like in the 2010s was because they tried to make it PG, which is the dumbest idea ever. If you're gonna fake fight, why would you make it PG? Like that completely takes the fun out of it. But I don't know. They're dumb. Yeah. It is what it is. So that's my little love letter to this year's WrestleMania. It made me feel rather dumb for not watching it. Yeah, I don't know. I was gonna, you know what? Another shout out. Watch UFC 300 because it's gonna be sick. I'll be watching UFC 300.
I will not.
Caleb won't be. I know that's not a note to Caleb. All the people out there, because I know you don't like combat sports, but all the people out there who have any thought process at all about whether they want to watch it, it's got the most insane card ever, and I'm so hyped to sit on the couch and watch grown men and women beat the piss out of each other for like 4 hours. It's gonna be such a fun afternoon. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Whether you were watching on YouTube or Fresh Take, make sure to check out both because both definitely are fun. If you get sick of our faces, like Caleb said, there's definitely an option over there to be able to just listen to our almost more annoying voices, but that's okay. So maybe it's a better of two evils.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so make sure to check out everything else everywhere on TikTok, all that. Am I missing anything? I don't think so. Check us out everywhere. Yeah. Next week.